recording.
So, observations of the work environment, the advantages. Data gathered by observation can be highly reliable. So, when you really go and observe people at work, it can be the data that you gather, and relatively inexpensive. Only you have to waste some time because you have to observe different people working, and allow systems analysts to do work measurements. Work measurements is like how many people are needed and how long will they take to do this. That kind of measurements can be easily calculated using this by observing the work environment. And systems analyst is able to see exactly what is being done. So, rather than just listening to people saying this is what I do at work, this is my job, and this is how I enter the data, this is what I do with the data. Rather than listening to people saying this, you can always obtain or more correct information. The disadvantages of this is, as you can see in this picture, most people are very unhappy when they see that someone is observing that to work while being observed, and that is because they feel very uncomfortable when being watched. Work being observed may not involve the level of difficulty or volume normally experienced during that time. So, supposing the analyst who goes to observe goes at a lull period, like when the person does not have so much of work, then he will get a wrong impression that this is not a, you do not have to deal with so many of these people at the same time, or the level of difficulty, because sometimes when you deal with certain business processes, there are very simple processes. They appear to be very simple in certain instances. That is, if you are dealing with the customer problems, it may be very simple. But say supposing a customer that comes whose credit limit has expired or something, then what do you do? Then there is a little complexity in the process, because it is not just dealing with that simple customer, but now there is a constraint because this customer has now exceeded the credit limit. So, you have to take some other type of action. So, therefore, this just observing this work may not, the analyst may not come across instances where that kind of complexity is at work right now. If he does not see it, then he may think always it is this simple process that goes, and he will misunderstand the situation. Some tasks may not always be performed in the manner in which they are observed by the systems analysts and so on, right. I think there is a very good story in the reference book, page 218, called the railroad paradox. I suggest that you read this little story. It is a very interesting story. It gives the disadvantages, actually it describes the disadvantages of this gathering information by observing the work environment. Then special purpose documents allow the analyst to collect information. Special purpose documents allow the analyst to collect information and opinions from a large, these are, I think we are talking about questionnaires. Questionnaires are very special purpose documents, and they allow, questionnaire I said is another method of gathering data, allow the analyst to collect information and opinions from a large audience. That is, I said, if these people are geographically distributed, maybe within Sri Lanka, they may be in different places, or sometimes your customers may not be only in Sri Lanka, but in other countries as well. So, this questionnaire is a method that you can use in such cases. So, most advantages are most questionnaires can be answered quickly, because when we get questionnaires, some of them are very easy to answer, allow individuals to maintain anonymity, and most of the time we say you do not have to give your personal details, or you do not have to sign anywhere or anything. So, through this questionnaire they are not frightened that they can be identified. So, therefore, they can easily give their opinion. Relatively inexpensive way of gathering data, because you do a questionnaire, if you design it properly, then you can post it or email it or whatever, and it is a very inexpensive way of gathering data. Responses can be tabulated and analyzed quickly. You can do graphs and you can do various things with this data to convert it into information. Right, you can see the graphs that there is a graph here that has been produced using the data that has been gathered through a questionnaire. To continue with the disadvantages of the questionnaires is the number of respondents is often low. That is, when you send a questionnaire out to say 100 people, maybe only 60 people will respond. So, not all the people that you send the questionnaire to may not respond. There is a disadvantage in that, and mostly suited for closed questions. What we say closed questions is whether they can answer with a yes or no, or whether they can just tick somewhere, because people do not really like to write long descriptive things because they think it is waste of their time, or they can't be bothered writing so much. So, the questionnaires are more suited for closed questions. No guarantee that an individual will answer or expand on all the questions. So, there is no guarantee. Now, at an interview you can always ask a question and get a response back, you can guarantee that. But in the questionnaire you send it out, some people may fill all the questions, some people may not answer all the questions, there is no guarantee. And good questionnaires are difficult to prepare. You should really, when you are designing a questionnaire, you should really take a look. It is like the requirement analysis phase in the system development life cycle. You have to really spend a lot of time in really designing a good questionnaire, because the questionnaire should gather the data that is really going to give the information that you really want at the end of it. So, therefore, and you are printing these questionnaires or you are designing and emailing it. So, before you send it out, you have to be 100% sure that this is going to capture all the data that you are going to need to get the information that you really want out of it. No immediate opportunity to clarify a vague or incomplete answer to any question. So, if some person has kept a question blank, or if they have just written a vague answer, it will be very difficult to clarify again, because you have to get at that person again and then clarify. So, that is a little difficult with the questionnaires. Types of questionnaires, there can be free format, we say there are free format questionnaires and fixed format questionnaires. Free format is where a question is asked and the respondent records the answer in the space provided after the question. Fixed format is contains questions that require specific responses from individuals. So, fixed format, they can't really choose and write whatever they want. They contain questions that require specific responses from the individuals. And there are three types of fixed format questions. There are multiple choice questions, that is given several answers and you can select one of them. Then the rating questions, given a statement and asked to use supplied responses to state an opinion, that is given a rating. Ranking questions, given several possible answers to be ranked in order of preference or experience. Again, I would like you to refer to the pages 221 and 222, because this gives very good examples of for the three different types. Then the another technique that we discussed was the interviews, and this is the most commonly used technique in analysis. Collects information from individuals face to face. You conduct a face to face interview, must possess good human relation skills for dealing effectively with different type of people. So, all people in this world are not the same. Therefore, analyst has to be a person who can understand all these people and develop good relations with people, and then gather or extract the information that he really wants to get. Can be used to achieve any of the following goals: find facts, verify. Once you have found facts, you have to verify. Verify means you have to go and ask back and see whether what you have understood is what they really meant. Generate enthusiasm, solicit ideas and opinions. That is, you can get most of the time people working in organizations, they know ways and means of solving their problems. It is just that they have not been listened to. So, by listening to them, by asking for their ideas how to solve a problem, you may be able to find better solutions. Get the end user always involved, clarify facts, identify the requirements. So, interviews are very good at all these things. Advantages of interviews: gives the analyst an opportunity to motivate the interviewee to respond freely and openly to questions. That is, you can make the person that you are interviewing feel relaxed, and when you are relaxed, automatically that person also will be relaxed. So, he will freely respond to the questions that you ask. Allow the analyst to look for more feedback from the interviewee. So, always by asking one question, you may be able to get more information than what you really intended. Permit the analyst to ask questions from each individual, etc. Because a set of questions that you ask from one person, maybe you can ask another person and see what that person's responses would be like. New ideas may arise. So, as I said, usually the users they understand their system. Sometimes they may have good ideas. So, you can listen to those things as well, which you cannot get through a questionnaire. The disadvantages of interviews: very time consuming, because you have to talk to a lot of people, and each interview at least will take 15 to half an hour, and then maybe you have to repeat these interviews. Success of interviews is highly dependent on the system's analyst's human relations skills. Interviews may be impractical due to the location of interviews. As I said, if your users are geographically displaced or in different areas in the world or in the country, then going to meet them individually would be impossible. The types of interviews: there may be unstructured interviews, or you may have structured interviews. In an unstructured interview, this is conducted with only a general goal or subject in mind. You are not really targeting, or you are not focusing at a particular thing, but it is a general interview. Contain only a few questions, if any specific ones. So, your questions may be of a general nature. Interviewer counts on interviewer to provide a framework and direct the conversation. So, the analyst will always depend on the interviewer to carry on with the conversation. That is the direction in which he will go. Most probably they will talk about the problems that they have. So, initially you ask a question which will motivate him to talk about more things within his problem area. Structured interviews: interviewer has a specific set of questions to ask of the interview. That is, you plan your questions beforehand, and then you want answers for those questions. Types of interview questions: what are called open-ended questions or close-ended questions. Open-ended questions allow the interviewer to respond in any way that seems appropriate. That is, they can go into a long description in answering. So, that will allow the freedom for the person who is being interviewed to respond in a personal way. Close-ended questions restrict answers to either specific choices or short direct responses like yes or no, or very short answers. And then how to conduct an interview. Before you really conduct the interview, you should really select the people that you are going to interview, because interview the end users of the information system you are studying. There are formal organizational chart will help you here to identify these individuals and their responsibilities. So, that is why we said at the very beginning itself, this organizational chart is a very important thing, and also you have to see whether it is the current organizational chart, not something that has been drawn 10 or 15 years ago and not been updated. So, when you look at the organizational chart, you know who are the people who are at the top of the management, who are the people at the lower and middle levels, and what are their actual tasks and what are their responsibilities. And when you are in this data gathering process or information gathering process, you have to talk to people at different levels, and also you have to talk to them for different time periods also. Maybe people at the higher levels will not have time to devote to you like 1 hour or half an hour or whatever, but people at the lower levels you would be able to spend more time with them. So, you need to identify who are the people you are going to interview and what kinds of time you are going to spend with these people, and always make an appointment with the interviewee. You can't just walk into a place and then expect these people to have free time to talk to you. Higher the management level of the interviewees, less time should be spent. Interviews, how to conduct an interview. Prepare for the interview, prepare an interview guide, checklist of specific questions interviewer will ask the interviewee. So, before you go for the interview, you have to do a lot of preparatory work, because once you go there, you do not have time to be thinking of questions and so on that you want to ask. You do have to have a checklist of, checklist means a list of things that you really want to ask the person. Avoid the type of questions such as loaded questions. Loaded questions means things like this: do you need to include both of these columns for this report? So, the thing is, it's as if you are saying that these two columns are not important. Maybe they are important for some reason, that is why they are there. Or leading questions such as, you are not going to use this operator code, are you? So, you are asking the person, are you really using this operator code? Of course, the operator code may be used, may not be used, but you are not going to ask that question in such a way so that they can easily say, no, we are not going to use it. Then why have it? So, bias questions, example, how many codes do we need for food classification in the inventory file? I think 20 should cover it. So, this is analyst assumption here, I think 20 should cover it. So, there are different categories of food in this, let us take a supermarket. So, how many codes do you really need? So, the analyst himself is saying, okay, I think 20 should cover it, there may be 100 items there. So, not to ask biased questions like that. So, use in the interview question guideline, use clear and concise language. Sometimes we use our own IT jargon words in when we are talking to people. They may not understand what we are talking about. So, use clear and concise to the point. Do not include your opinion as part of a question. Avoid long or complex questions, because when you ask a long question, it is very difficult to for a person to remember this question. So, always try and structure your questions as short questions. Avoid threatening questions, that is, sometimes most of the time when new systems are going to be developed in organizations, people working there, they take it as a threat to their livelihood. They think they are going to lose their jobs because of this new system. So, do not ask questions which will really threaten them more. Verify before you leave. So, you ask questions, you gather information, you note down all that information, and before you leave from the interview, just check, go back to all the information that you have gathered and try to find out whether what you have gathered is really correct or not. The purpose of the interview is to investigate, not to evaluate or criticize. Evaluate means like, are you trying to see whether, or do not let them have the opinion that you are interviewing them to find their faults, or like criticizing, this is not the way you should have done this. So, that is not for you to say at this point. The actual interview consists of 3 phases, that is interview opening, intended to influence or motivate the interview to participate. As I said, first you have to make the person that you are interviewing relaxed. So, you may be just talking about something maybe not even in the area of the work that you are going to do, maybe just to relax the person. Then the interview body, obtain interview's response to your list of questions. So, the actual facts that you really want to gather, that is in the body of the interview. Then interview conclusion, express your appreciation, that is you thank them, which is very important for maintaining good relationship and trust, because say you want to go back to this person again for some reason or the other, if you haven't even thanked the person, he will say, oh, this guy is coming again and it's a nuisance, right. So, therefore, interview conclusion, at the conclusion you should also verify facts that what you have gathered are really correct, and also you should try to thank them and show them the courtesy for the time that they have allocated to you. This prototyping again is another good technique. In the prototyping, what you really do is you build a small working model of the user's requirements or a proposed design for an information system. So, this kind of technique can be really used, especially when you are also not very familiar with the system that you are going to work with. So, you can either show a prototype of some system existing somewhere else of requirements, having requirements like this, or you can build a small prototype, and as you go on you can add more information or more requirements into this prototype, which we call really discovery prototyping, and which will allow the analyst to quickly create mock forms and tables to simulate the implemented system. So, it is only a simulation, really it is not the system, but you are just showing a prototype of the system. So, what the analyst will do is, analyst will in prototyping, analyst will develop a model following an initial analysis, and then a repeat visit may then validate the model with the user. You go and show the prototype or this model to the user, and you can get their responses and see whether you have really identified their requirements correctly. Then the agreement is reached on the model, okay, we agree, the users agree with you, yes, these are the things that we want out of the system. Further detailed data may be gathered to elaborate the model. So, you may refine this model or the prototype more and more as you go into the system. This iterative approach, why we call it iterative is because you build one prototype and you can elaborate on the same prototype by adding more functionalities to it. So, it serves a number of purposes. There is always a record of information gathered to date, ensures correctness of the information as you continually verify the results with the user. That is because you go and show this prototype to the user which he can understand. So, then he could either say, no, these are not what we want, or this is what we want. That is what you mean by verification. Analyst does not get too far ahead using wrong assumptions. So, because if we go ahead with wrong assumptions, as I said earlier, it can be very costly and it can be really a waste of time. So, therefore, this is a very good technique to use to identify the requirements correctly. The advantages of prototyping: allow users and developers to experiment with the software and develop with an understanding. So, because you are developing this stage by stage and you are presenting it to the users, they can always verify this. Helps to determine feasibility and usefulness of the system, minimize the time spent for fact finding, and help define more stable requirements. Disadvantages: developer may need to be trained in the prototyping approach. So, you have to have some sort of explanation to the users if they are going to help you with this developing the prototype. What we are doing, they will have to know something about the techniques, and prototype can only simulate system functionality and are incomplete in nature. So, as far as the user is concerned, user does not know how you really build systems. He may get the wrong assumption that your system, that his system is built now by looking at the prototype. So, they may think, okay, this is it, so why don't you give it to us now? But as analysts and developers, we know that a prototype is not the actual system. You have to add, you have to refine it, you have to build the system more methodically. So, also this may extend the development schedule because you keep on presenting them various prototypes, add more functionalities, this may take time, and increase the development costs, because depending on the type of prototype that you have to build, it may increase the development costs. Then this joint requirement planning is as the word means, joint requirement planning. Joint means it is with the involvement of the users and the team of developers. It's a highly structured group. Meetings are conducted to analyze problems and define the requirements. JRP is a subset of a more comprehensive joint application development, or what you call the JAD technique. That is, you develop that system with the help of the users with their joint effort. So, this is just the planning stage in the analysis stage. Who are the participants in this JRP? The sponsor is, let us look at one person called the sponsor. He serves as the JRP champion, or he is really the person who can really make decisions whether this particular feature should be added or not, or whether we can commit so much of money into this project or not. So, serves as a JRP champion, single person in top management who makes the final decision. So, sponsor, you have only one sponsor. Then the facilitator, single individual who plays the role of the leader or facilitator, someone who has excellent communication skills. I must say this facilitator's job is really like you are like an arbitrator between the users and the development group. So, he has to have very good communication skills, and sometimes that kind of person may not be available in certain organizations. So, you hire the expertise, or you hire an expert as a facilitator. There are facilitators who can be hired like that. They are experts at really solving conflicting, when you come to conflicts in requirements or conflicting situations, they are good at solving that kind of problems. Then of course, the participants, those are the users and managers, number of participants from the user and management. Both users and managers are relied on to ensure that their critical success factors are being addressed. So, when you select these participants, you must select them in such a way that they are people who can contribute something to this joint planning process. There is no point in getting people involved who will not come out with their ideas and so on. Then the scribes. Scribes are those who are responsible for keeping records. So, usually they will not get involved in any discussions or anything. What they will do is they will record all the proceedings at the meetings. System analysts frequently play this role. Then the IT staff, IT personnel who primarily listen and take notes regarding. Now, these notes and the scribes are different. These are notes about the various issues and requirements. So, IT staff usually consists of members of the project team. Then another fact finding technique is this, what you call the document flow diagram. It is used to identify physical movement of documents. That is, when you walk into an organization, let us take this example that we see here. Here there is a purchasing department and there is a supplier. So, they are purchasing, let us say, food items or furniture or whatever. Now, the purchasing department has to send a document called the purchase order to the supplier. So, this is one document that you will see in this system, and these documents will show where the document comes from. Okay, this purchase order originated from the purchase department. Where does it go? It goes to the supplier. What is it called? It's called the purchase order. So, you look at these documents. So, similarly, we will look at some other documents. Let us see, this order goes from the purchase department to the supplier, purchase order. Then the supplier in turn, when he gets the order, what will he do? He will send goods to the stores belonging to this particular customer. And he will not just send the goods alone, he will send a delivery note with it, and that is another document, right. In the delivery note, it will describe whatever the goods they are sending to the stores, and this delivery note will have a copy. It will be maybe 3 copies, one for these people to take it back and one to be kept in the stores, and one copy of the delivery note will go to the purchase department. Now, what does this delivery note really say? It tells the purchasing department people, we have received these goods according to the description in the delivery note. So, there are 3 documents that you have come across in this system. There is a purchase order, there is an invoice, there is a delivery note, and this system is a purchasing system. So, once you have identified those documents, then you can put it into a diagrammatic form. Here you have the entity called the supplier, you have the stores, you have the purchasing department. The supplier purchasing department will send an order from the purchasing department to the supplier. Supplier in turn will send the goods to the stores with a delivery note. A copy of the delivery note will be received by the purchasing department, and the supplier will then send an invoice to the purchase department so that they can make the necessary payment. So, now using this you can easily identify the system's boundary. So, what you are dealing with is within this boundary you can easily identify the scope or the system boundary. So, that is a very good animation where it shows the now let us look at another, there may be another. Now, this is the purchasing system. In the same organization there may be a maintenance system. Whatever the goods that you have purchased, they do maintenance. Now, say you have purchased some furniture or some equipment like computers, printers, they may require maintenance. Now, when maintenance, there is a different system. Purchasing system is not going to deal with the maintenance. So, that is a different system, and these people, maintenance, will again contact the supplier, but that you can see that is outside the scope of this purchasing system. Maintenance are also people in the same organization. Supplier is the same supplier that dealt with the purchase department of that organization, but still they are not inside this purchasing system. Those communications or those documents that go forth between these people are really outside the consideration of this system. So, that is how you really identify the system boundary. This is a very good mechanism. The document flow diagram is a very good mechanism to develop your context diagram in the first instance. The advantages and usefulness of document flow diagrams used to identify the documents in the system, identify the flow of documents, to understand the workflow of the existing system, used to define the system boundary, used to draw data flow diagrams after further analyzing. Those are the advantages or the usefulness of the document flow diagrams. Then we come to the very important area, the documentation. Now, as I said, as you do your analysis, you have to document all this, because this is a very complex process and you can't retain all this information that you gather in your head or in your mind. You really have to put it down in writing in the form of diagrams or text or whatever. So, documentation is both a communication tool as well as a management tool. It is a communication tool because it contains a repository of all work done to date. So, all facts that you have gathered in observation or interviews or whatever you have documented. So, it is a repository of all the work done so far, and it is available to all the persons working on related parts of a large project. So, if it is a large project, different people will be involved in different parts of this project. So, whatever relevant to those people will be available from this repository. Such a repository can prevent unnecessary repetitions when someone leaves the project team. So, this people leaving in the IT industry especially, the personnel movement is very high. That is, the people that you found in an organization one day, you will find them, they have moved out to another organization because they get better salaries and better working conditions and so on. So, every time somebody left, if you had to repeat your projects, whatever the work that you have done so far, if you had to repeat, then you will never finish those projects. You will always be repeating the work that you have done. So, therefore, it is very important that you keep a written documentation of all this work that you have done so far. So, even if someone leaves and even if new people join that project, they will be able to continue from where the previous people stopped. Then we said documentation is also serves as a management tool. It supports management in two ways, gives access to the latest work to all project personnel and thus reduces the chance of work having to be repeated, because the management of the project as well as the management of the organization can look at these documents and see how much of work has been done, and you don't have to repeat those things. It is the only project deliverable. Deliverable means the output of a project phase or during the various stages of this life cycle. This is the only deliverable thing that you can really see, especially in the early project phases, and thus serves to determine the project status and the progress. It is also a part of the phase output. The output of the requirement analysis is really this documentation during this stage, because otherwise this is all, if people did not document whatever their findings, then it will be in people's heads and their minds, and you will not know what progress you have made. Even the project manager will not be able to make an evaluation how far the project has progressed and what is its current status. Now, different people call this document different names. It is known as requirement definition document. It is also known as requirement statement, also known as requirement specification and functional specification. Whatever you call it, usually it is a formal document that communicates the requirements of a proposed system to key stakeholders of the system. It serves as a communication tool between the project people and the stakeholders. Serves as a contract for the system project. So, once you have identified these requirements and all that, based on this document you should be able to sign a contract with the owners of the system. Final deliverable of the requirements analysis phase and known by these various other names. What should it really have? Consists of functions and services the system should provide. We said functional requirements, non-functional requirements at the beginning of this lesson. So, these things should be given. The constraints, budget constraints, time constraints and so on, or technical constraints, information about other systems with which the system must interface. No standard format for the document, but you can look at page 214 in reference 1 for a sample requirements definition outline. What are the things that should be there? Who will read this document? System owners and users to specify their requirements and any changes that may arise. Managers to prepare, that is managers of the project to prepare project plans and estimates. Developers, those people who are really in the development team to understand what is required and to develop tests to validate the system. So, that is the end of that lesson, and we will continue with another lesson in the design stage. Analysis stage is concluded with this, but I suggest that you read the pages in the given reference book, because it is very interesting and it gives more details in the textbook. Thank you.